What is going on, guys? All right, welcome to the review slash out of the box overview of the Steyr L9-A1. I picked it up a couple weeks ago. I've taken it to the range once, put 100 rounds of Winchester white box through it. So that's where I'm at now. I don't do torture testing or anything like that. So my review is coming from the 100 rounds that I've run through the gun. I'm going to show you some of the features, kind of give you my impressions of how it's shot and whether or not I recommend it, and kind of go over what you get in the box. Now, let's get the elephant in the room out of the way first and foremost. Yes, it says Steyr Mannlicher on it. And it also says it on the gun, and that's just a fact of life. So if you are homophobic, you might not want this gun. I don't know. I don't care personally. I like the gun anyway. So let's crack it open and see what you got in the box. Oh yeah, there's the manual, which I took out of the box and forgot. But you get the gun, 2 magazines. These little locking keys, which you can lock your gun up if you want. I don't like those things. I never use them. I never lock my guns up in that manner. I do have a handful of guns that have like a little lock on it, whether it's Smith & Wesson or Taurus or whatever. I don't like them. Don't use them. It'll stay in this box. They also, bless them, they give you a gun lock. But here you go. This is your gun lock. This is like a 99-cent store padlock. So, I mean, maybe if you need something to lock up your luggage or something, or a locker at school, I don't know, but it's certainly not a gun lock. I don't even know where you would put that padlock on this gun to lock it up and keep it from firing. But again, I don't use gun locks or anything like that. You get 2 15-round magazines. They're 15-round magazines, but they come with a +2 base plate. So, in essence, 17-round magazines. These are the same magazines that the smaller M9-A1 uses, and so they just reuse the same magazines. I don't know if they make larger capacity magazines than the 15 with the +2 base plate. I didn't do any research to find out, but I will at some point. And if they make larger magazines, I'll probably pick some up. All right. Now, the gun itself has a very cool futuristic look, which is one of the things that drew me to it, okay? It looked like something that I would see on an episode of Battlestar Galactica, right next to the Beretta CX-4 Storms that they used on that show as their kind of quote-unquote futuristic rifle, right? It just has a cool look, and I like it. That was one of the first things that drew me to it, and then after I got to shoot one, that's why I knew I wanted to buy one. But, you know, standard polymer striker-fired gun. Got these sights here. These are kind of like the, it's like a little triangle, okay? So unique sights, I guess, which I do like. They work very well. They function exactly as you would want them to. They're not hard to acquire or anything like that. I also like Glock sights. I also like the 6-dot-the-eye sights. Really, the only sights I don't like are 3-dot sights. I don't mind having a dot up front, but I like blacked out rear sights or something else. I don't like 3-dot sights. It's just not my thing. So this falls in line with the kinds of sights that I usually tend to like. But it is a fairly Glock-like design overall, and you're going to hear that term a lot probably when you hear somebody talk about this, and I'll explain why. You see, the 2 men, and don't ask me to say their names. It's Austrian names. I can't pronounce them. Maybe it's Mannlicher. I don't know. The 2 guys that designed this gun previously worked on the redesign of Glock's Gen 3s back in, what was it, the 90s, late 90s, I think, or it may have been early 2000s, whenever the Gen 3 was getting a redesign from the Gen 2. And those 2 individuals wanted to do more to the Glock. They wanted to change the Glock more. Glock didn't want to do that. They wanted to keep it pretty simple, pretty short and sweet, just a couple of quick little changes to make some improvements to the Gen 2's design, and then throw the Gen 3 out there on the market. So what these 2 guys did is they went to Steyr and then they designed this gun because they said this is the gun they thought the Glock Gen 3 should have been. It probably wouldn't have been exactly like this. It would have been much more Glock looking, but there's a lot of things they would have done to the Glock 3 that were done in this gun. So according to them, this is better than a Glock Gen 3. That's their opinion. You may not agree, but that's what they envisioned. Okay, so you'll hear that term Glock-like used a lot when you're talking about these Steyr pistols because of that connection there. I'm going to do a video later on, either maybe later this week or next week, of a direct comparison between this and a Gen 3 Glock 17, and you'll see what I'm talking about. You'll see all the similarities, and you'll see the things they did to quote-unquote upgrade this from a Glock design. Okay, but that's the basics of the gun, the overall what you're going to get out of the box. As far as the gun itself, I mean, it's a really nice gun. Because of the design of the grip, because of the design of the overall gun, you see the grip here, how they cut it down. It doesn't have that hump that Glock has, and it cuts up in here, so it creates a really low bore axis there. And also you really get your hand up in there. It's got some nice finger grooves which fit me. They may not fit everybody. Glock finger grooves fit me as well. Between that and the trigger, it's a very, very nice shooting gun. Out of the box, it's probably, well, yeah, out of the box, it is the nicest shooting striker-fired gun I've ever fired, which is one of the reasons that I've been wanting one for so long, okay? It just shoots really, really nice. Now, when I do the comparison video later on, I'll explain the differences between this trigger and a Glock trigger and how they upgraded this trigger system from a Glock trigger system to make it such a nice trigger, because it really, really is a really nice trigger. And it's hard to tell if you haven't ever pulled the trigger on one, but you got a little bit of take up there. But you notice with this take up, there's no noise. There's no gritty feeling, there's no sponginess, it's just clean take up and then crisp break. No springy, gritty, whatever mushy feeling that you get with Glocks and a lot of other striker fired guns out of the box. It's a very, very clean breaking trigger, and that's because of the design of the trigger system inside. It is, in my opinion, the nicest out of the box striker fired trigger, period, on the market today, right there. It is an excellently designed trigger that gives you a really, really nice clean break, really light trigger weight. It's probably 3/4 of a pound lighter, maybe even a pound lighter, depending on, I don't have that exact measurement, just as of how it feels, how smooth it is, than let's say a Glock or something else at that 5.5 pounds. I mean, if somebody told me this was 4.5 pounds, I'd go like, well, that makes sense. It's about what it feels like. Maybe it's 5, I don't know exactly, but it is noticeably lighter than a Glock or a Smith & Wesson M&P trigger. And you guys know I love Glocks and Smith & Wesson M&Ps. I own both. But it's a very nice trigger nonetheless. The only thing that I could say about the trigger that I would say Glock has an advantage in is the reset. And as you know, in a reset on a Glock is very loud and tactile. It's very audible. You can hear it, you can feel it. On this gun, the reset's there, nice clean break, and it's reset, and you can feel it, but you can't hear it. It's not as tactile, it's not as audible. So that's it. That was it. That was the reset. Now, it's like that on most guns. Glock just happens to be the exception that has a really loud, audible, tactile reset, especially for a striker-fired polymer gun. So this is more in line with a lot of other guns out there on the market, but I guess it would be considered a downside if you like a really crisp, clear, noticeable reset. This doesn't have that the way a Glock does. The other thing, if I'm nitpicking, that I could say I would want to see improved, and actually did get improved with the A2 series, which is out. I just couldn't find one, and it didn't bother me enough to not buy this one. And that's the grip itself. It really, there's not much there. I mean, it looks a little grippy. It's a little grippy. These little ribs on the front and these ribs on the back are okay, but they're not, I mean, they're nothing to write home about. They're really not. What makes this gun shootable is the fact that you can really get up in there. It makes it very, very controllable, and you don't feel like, even with the very minimal, grippiness of the grip itself, you don't feel like you're going to lose control of the gun, even with sweaty hands. And the day I went to the range, it was hot and my hands were sweaty. That being said, if you wanted to get it stippled, you certainly could, or you could just hunt around for an A2 model, which has improved texturing there. Sight-wise, we got the sights there. Got this little triangle sight, which is works great. Very cool looking little sight, but it works great, and that's the point. I'm not a fan of 3-dot sights at all. I like the Glock, ball and cup sights. I like 6-dot the eye sights. I like these sights. If you're going to give me a big dot on front, I'd rather have blacked out sights than 3-dot sights. That's just me. So I like these sights, but that's all personal preference. You'd have to decide whether or not you like that yourself. We do got some really, really nice serrations on the front and rear. They don't look like much, but they're actually very grippy, very easy to maneuver the gun, whatever way you want to maneuver the gun. And they help out a lot because this slide is not as thick as, let's say, a Glock side. Glock side would come down about to there, where my finger is, so there's less meat to grab onto. It has more in common with like a CZ as far as less meat to grab onto on the slide, but it still works really, really, really well. As far as the takedown, that is one major difference, I would say, but not a big one, or not major differences, but it's not a bad difference, I should say, between the Glock and something like this. This one, you have this little button right here that you depress with your finger, and then you flip this lever down, and then it just comes apart. That's it. So, very, very easy, very simple, more in line with like a SIG or an M&P or something like that. I will say it's a very tight fitting slide to frame fit, basically. It's not, there. Unlike with a Glock, there's no rattle. You can shake this thing around, it doesn't make a sound. There's no Glock rattle. So much tighter tolerances. You can say that's good. You can say that's bad. Again, personal preference. All in all, look, I like this gun, man. I really, really like this gun. It is not just the trigger, but just overall. It is probably the best out-of-the-box striker-fired polymer gun that I've ever gotten my hands on. I'm really happy that I get to own one now. Price-wise, these things run about 500 bucks. It's right in line with a Gen 4 Glock. The downside, obviously, is there's a lot less of these out there. So magazines are a little more expensive. They're about, I believe, 35 bucks a piece if you find them online. And you're not going to find parts as easily as available as you would with a Glock, or even nowadays with something like a Smith & Wesson M&P. So there is a downside to this. But as far as the gun itself, the functionality, just the shootability, the reliability, the overall look of the gun, the trigger, how it functions, and the price. This is a fantastic option if you're looking for something, whether it's for home defense, range use, concealed carry, anything like that. They do make other models. This is the largest one. They make 4 different models. This one is the L9 series. Then there's the M9 series, which is slightly smaller barrel. Then there's the C9 series, which is a slightly smaller, even smaller barrel. Then there's the S series, which is the subcompact, which is a much smaller barrel and much smaller grip as well, but it will still take these magazines. So there are multiple options for this particular gun. It's a great gun. I can't stress that enough. If you're in the market for a polymer striker-fired gun, this is, in my opinion, your best option. I mean, it's a great price, in line with every other polymer gun out there on the market, by and large. And it is, in my opinion, out of the box, better than any other polymer striker-fired gun. So there you go. That's it. That's my review/overview. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Got any questions, comments, leave that stuff down below, and we will talk to you guys later.